Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. So we're going to start taking a look at Hurricane Hector. And Hector appears to be on the way to Hawaii. And so, as we see here, basically they're urging the citizens to prepare. As we take a look at the cone and we see that it looks as if it would be there sometime on Wednesday p.m. or in the general vicinity. Right now it has it going, the cone going just over the southernmost point of the Big Island. And we'll see how this develops. As this is, something Hawaii, I'm sure, doesn't really need right now, is have a hurricane come along, especially hitting the Big Island there. And as it says here, as if the ongoing Kilauea volcano eruption isn't enough for Hawaii, the state now faces the potential impact of a storm with Hurricane Hector's path, bringing it near the islands in the latest forecast update. Already, the state's emergency management agency has issued a warning for residents and telling them to hold 14 days of rations just in case. And that's always a good idea anyway. Hector is currently a significant storm, a Category 3, with winds of 120 miles per hour as of early Saturday morning. It was about 1,600 miles east of the Big Island of Hawaii at 2 a.m. Pacific time Saturday, moving in a westerly line. The movement puts Hector's forecast path very close to the southern tip of the Hawaiian Islands by midweek, and it's possible the hurricane's path could shift north towards the state, threatening at least parts of it. It all depends on the way the wind flows. And when we take a look at this on Ventuski, you get an idea, and it's even a little bit more ominous when we look at Ventuski. Every time I look at the Pacific over here, there's just this. This is Wednesday, so that is Hector. And then, what do we got? We have two more right behind it. So this is what I was talking about. There's this weird pattern that we have seen out in the Pacific where it just is kind of churning storms in the same spots, I should say. They keep popping up. And of course they don't head in exactly the same line, but this is kind of ominous because, here this is the general flow. And we'll see how it goes and how it develops. So this is what we're looking at on Wednesday. And so if we go out a little bit farther, and of course these things could change. I mean, you're seeing these two behind it looking pretty significant as we go Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Hector's moved on past and is still a solid looking storm, and then we have these two behind it just kind of hanging there. And what's going to happen with those? We don't know at this point. All going to depend on the currents. But if we're looking out all the way to the 13th, which, this could be so drastically changed, realistically, we have another storm heading towards Hawaii. And again, it depends on the wind flows. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye on this. And then, of course, then you have what is Hector moving on over this way. As we've seen these storms just continually develop over here as well. And when we look out in the Atlantic, there's nothing. There's really nothing. You got some winter storms brewing down low, but it's really quiet. And the Atlantic has been colder, and it's very, very interesting watching all these things, So we will keep our eye on it, and we will hope for the best for Hawaii. And there's a lot of weird things going on. I mean, we've seen all these crazy storms, and you guys might have seen this. This was a huge, massive, 5,000 foot high wall of dust engulfing Phoenix here area, 70 miles wide, 5,000 feet high. And I'll let you guys play the videos and you can catch the time lapse and everything. Just epic, biblical, sure, You know, just it looks like we're looking at like an old school Cecil B. DeMille film, or maybe the old Mummies. I'm really gonna date myself with the Cecil B. DeMille thing. That's actually not even my generation. It's actually more my mother's and father's. And so, as we have seen, you know, it's just been wild and crazy ride lately. We have a mysterious fireball exploding with the power of a small nuclear bomb above a U.S. base in Greenland, puzzling NASA scientists. Well, maybe it's puzzling them. Maybe they know what it is and they're just not going to say. A mysterious fireball exploding with the power of a small nuclear bomb, which was detected not far from a U.S. air base in Greenland, has alerted a NASA space explorer. Another called for a calm, saying it's not a Russian strike. The curious tweet was released by Ron Balke, a space explorer at NASA's JPL lab. In late July, a fireball was detected over Greenland on July 25th, 2018, by U.S. government sensors at an altitude of 43.3 kilometers. He wrote, the energy from the blast was estimated to be at 2.1 kilotons. Pretty wild. The information about the cosmic flotsam was also bugged researcher Hans Christensen, a director of the Nuclear Information Project at the Federal Aviation of American Scientists. He said that the meteor exploded above Missile Early Warning Radar at Thule Air Base, the northernmost U.S. base that has operated on the island since the 1940s. Now this is very, very curious, and this feels just like a strange sci-fi movie, you know? Why did it happen to explode above the Missile Early Warning Radar at that base? Is this like a signal from outer space? Or are we supposed to take this as a signal that the aliens are testing our defenses, or giving us a warning shot over the bow? Is that how it's supposed to be? Is this the beginning of the Project Bluebeam fake invasion? What do you think? What do you guys make of this? This is really curious. Or maybe it's just my imagination running with it, because I've seen this in too many sci-fi movies. The scientists didn't pass up the opportunity for the Russians did it joke. We're still here, so they correctly concluded it wasn't a Russian first strike. He wrote, noting that there are nearly 2,000 nukes on alert, ready to launch. A cryptic fireball buzzing through the sky above a U.S. base in Greenland puzzles NASA scientists. Kristen's followers, however, didn't breathe a sigh of relief. The other way around, the message triggered tweets from puzzled people. Meteor explodes with a 2.1 kiloton force, 43 kilometers above an early warning missile base? I mean, come on. What could that be? And then this one says, forgive me, am I understanding that you're tweeting correctly that this meteor has been incorrectly identified? Or if it had been, it would have triggered the launch of 2,000 nukes? So, yeah, and this one says, one day soon we're going to all die from a miscalculation. So, are we meeting our maker? So the meteor was indeed big, and I hope it wasn't another military freak test. We're getting a lot of weird stuff. You know, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. And so we know all about all these things we've heard for years. All you guys out there that are, I won't say the conspiracy theorists, we're truthers, and we want to get to the truth. And we know that there's all sorts of diversions, all sorts of obvious lies and cover-ups, and then there's stuff that's BS that they feed into us to get us to think down a certain line of thought, and try to think that they are always, you know, several steps ahead of the masses for sure. And so even with the people that are awake to what's really going on, well, those would probably be the people that they want to know they're going to get their attention, but try to misdirect them or try to get them to think along certain lines. So, what's this all about? What is this all about? Was it really a mysterious fireball? Did it ever even happen at all? Because you have to wonder sometimes, who's giving you the info, what they're leaking. Did it really even happen at all? Was it an asteroid coming in? Are we getting into an area again where we're going to see massive asteroid inundation? And is that a harbinger of something to come? Is it really part of maybe the bigger war that's going on out there? Because many of you believe that there's a war going on out there. Some of you believe it's angels and demons fighting. And some of you believe it's Pleiadians and Draco fighting, or the Anunnaki fighting. And some believe the Anunnaki fight amongst themselves with different factions of the Anunnaki, at war with other factions. Or is this, maybe was it a test by the Russians or the Chinese or something? Who knows? Is this part of selling the Sky Force, Space Force, President Trump's new branch of the military? That is happening. So could this be, and that's, I'm feeling ding 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 with that, could this be a reason to sell us the need for a space force? Because who knows what's out there? Who knows what's right around the corner? Who knows what we're going to see in our skies? Are we going to wake up and look outside someday and see thousands of ships in the sky? So many ships you can't even count them. Well, it's pretty interesting because, honestly, when I was reading in the Bible and I was reading about the day of the Lord, and that is the picture that came in my mind, and I all of a sudden clicked with me, and I thought, oh, yeah, that would make perfect sense. Perfect sense. If you reread that, and you see that as an alien invasion with, God actually being an ET, then, yeah, return of God and, alien invasion, and that whole scenario would make sense. Because, yes, if we did look up and see tens of thousands of ET ships, all way more advanced than our technology, or supposedly our level of technology, and they were everywhere, all over the sky, yes, the whole earth would wail and moan. Everybody would be terrified, especially if our government was saying that we don't know who they are, and we don't know if they're hostile or not. And yeah, that would definitely make perfect sense for everything that was written in the Bible about the day of the Lord, and when God will come and rule on earth totally in front of us, in person. And if somebody didn't come and bring them their tithes and their respects, then God would shut off the rain to that part of the world that those people were in. So their land would wither and die if they weren't being properly obedient. So that all hit me, and that's part of our programming. That's part of the programming that we've been sold. And it's been in us because it's been taught in our religious institutions. It's been part of our culture, our sci-fi culture, all since the Roswell incident and the flying saucers. But, if you look back farther, it's always been there. Do you realize that back in the late 1800s, there was all these sightings of UFOs that look like blimps, like Zeppelins and stuff. And so it seems like we see almost what we want to see. And perhaps none of it's really even so much physical at all, but really interdimensional. And illusions, all of it is illusions. And it's interesting that I feel like so many people don't buy into some of the lies. They don't buy into all the lies, but they'll buy into some of the lies. And they can't see past all the conditioning that they've received. So I think that they're on their way to understanding how really this has been a huge illusion and a misdirection that has been put on us since the beginning. And so you could see what's going on, what's being set up. It's really very clear to see, and so it's a big puzzle. as the U.S. scientists are puzzled over what was this mysterious fireball. The whole thing is a big puzzle, and I hope that I'm not losing you guys in my train of thought here. So another very curious incident that we see one after another as we're into all these crazy earth changes that we're seeing all over, and it's not just that. That's just part of this. There's so much more going on. Unusually high seawater temperature forces Swedish nuclear power plant to close. And so this is really interesting in and of itself as well. So we know that they've been experiencing in the Arctic Circle temperatures 90 degrees. That's pretty intense. And so unusually high seawater temperature has forced a Swedish nuclear power plant to close, authorities said on Monday, as the water reached a temperature of 25 degrees Celsius. Wildfires are not the only consequence of the warmest July since temperature measurement began in Sweden in 1756. The Swedish state-owned power company Vattenfall was forced to close one of its reactors in the Ringhals nuclear power plant on Monday. Ringhals is the largest nuclear plant in the Nordics and accounts for a fifth of all the electricity consumed in Sweden. The plant has two old reactors, Ringhals 1 and 2, and two new ones, 3 and 4. Seawater is used to cool the reactors, and every reactor has a limit for how high the temperature of the water can get before it has to be taken offline for safety. So, for this one in question, number 2, the temperature is 25 degrees Celsius, which has now been surpassed in the area. When we saw the temperatures approaching 25 degrees Celsius on Monday, we chose to limit the effect to 55%. But now the temperature exceeds 25 degrees, so we have taken it off of productions. So sea temperatures this high are unusual in Sweden. During the 21st century, this is the second time a nuclear power plant is closed for the same reason. And as you know, if you've watched my videos, I'm not a big proponent of that. I just feel it's too much of a ticking time bomb. So this is interesting. VLA detects possible extrasolar planetary mass magnetic powerhouse. This is more than interesting. This is really something that I feel is such this is just such a leak. You know, there's no way around this. The object is at a boundary between a giant planet and a brown dwarf. So this is so much of what we've been thinking about when we're talking about Nibiru for so long. There's been so much speculation, so much, you know, possibilities of what type of a mass it would take out there. And so, again, think about the timing and think about, like, everything we're going through. So is this, you know, is it part of disclosure, or is it part of the bigger picture that they actually want to sell us? And or maybe it is actually real. They're admitting what is real. But just look at the timing on all this stuff coming out, right? I mean, we have that strange blast that's nuclear in origin. Now we have them talking about this object that is at a boundary between a giant planet and a brown dwarf. Look at the color. You know, this is what we've been kind of expecting in so many ways, many of us. And so they're giving us all the things we need to believe in the whole Nibiru Planet X timeline, as well as much, much more. You know, everything that is coming together is just convincing people. It's convincing the Nibiru Planet X believers, you know, the ancient alien believers. It's convincing the people that believe in, biblical fundamentalism and the fact that we are in the end times. We are in now the tribulation itself. As many people believe that we entered the tribulation with the eclipse last August. And honestly, that's what it felt like to me. It felt like, for sure, it's like all of the tribulation stuff clicked on as soon as we hit that time period, because we see a totally different, world that we're living in now. Everything is ramped up. There's no question about it. And if you remember it, it's like basically two sections. There's a build-up, and then kind of the second half of the tribulation period is when all hell hits Earth, type of thing. So the first segment of it, the first 3.5 years, so to speak, quote unquote, is just a build-up period where everything keeps getting more and more intense, and then it gets off the charts. But this is just so fascinating to see these type of admissions come out. So astronomers using the National Science Foundation's Carl G. Jansky's Very Large Array, VLA, have made the first radio telescope detection of a planetary mass object beyond our solar system. The object, about a dozen times more massive than Jupiter, is a surprisingly strong magnetic powerhouse and a rogue. There's that word, rogue. Think about Star Wars. We had Star Wars Rogue One. There's all these hints. A rogue system that comes in at a different angle than the other ones. And think about this, an object 12 times the size of Jupiter. And supposedly it's out there that far. Is it really that far? Is it already right here? Where is it? Is it somewhere around the orbit of Mars? And so many people will say, well, it couldn't be here, it couldn't be there, because we know this, we know that. This is a scientific fact of it. When you look at things, these scientific facts, quote unquote, change every day, and things that we were told and sold, in say the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, they're outdated. We know that they're incorrect, and for sure, everything changed tremendously when we discovered quantum physics. So this is all just so fascinating. So this object's right at the boundary between a planet and a brown dwarf, or a failed star, and it's giving us some surprises that can actually potentially help us to understand the magnetic processes on both stars and planets, said Melody Cow, who led the study while a graduate student at Caltech and now is a Hubble postdoctoral fellow at Arizona State University. Brown dwarfs are objects too massive to be considered planets, yet not massive enough to sustain nuclear fusion of hydrogen at their cores, the process that powers stars. And that, again, we're looking at the old science, or the current science, which may end up being outdated at some point as people start to understand the electric universe deeper and deeper, and the magnetism and the electromagnetism between the bodies, which might actually be the driving engine for the processes that were giving nuclear fusion the credit. So it's very interesting. So they were originally thought not to emit radio waves, but in 2001, a VLA discovery of a radio flaring in one revealed strong magnetic activity. Subsequent observations showed that some brown dwarfs have strong auroras, similar to that seen in our own solar system's giant planets. The auroras seen on Earth are caused by our planet's magnetic field interacting with the solar wind. However, solitary brown dwarfs do not have a solar wind from a nearby star to interact with. How the auroras are caused in brown dwarfs are unclear, but the scientists think one possibility is an orbiting planet or moon interacting with the brown dwarf's magnetic field. Such is what happens between Jupiter and its moon Io. The strange object in the latest study, called SIMP, and it gives you a series of numbers and letter, has a magnetic field more than 200 times stronger than Jupiter's. The object was originally detected in 2016 as one of 5 brown dwarfs the scientists studied with the VLA to gain knowledge about the magnetic fields and the mechanisms by which some of the coolest such objects can produce strong radio emissions. Brown dwarf masses are notoriously difficult to measure, and at that time the object was thought to be an old and much more massive brown dwarf. Last year, an independent team of scientists discovered that it was part of a very young group of stars. Its young age meant that it was in fact so much less massive that it could be a free-floating planet. only 12.7 times more massive than Jupiter, with a radius 1.22 times that of Jupiter. At 200 million years old and 20 light years from Earth, the object had a surface temperature of about 825 degrees Celsius, or more than 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. By comparison, the Sun's surface temperature is about 5500 degrees Celsius. The difference between a gas giant planet and a brown dwarf remains hotly debated amongst astronomers, but one rule of thumb that astronomers use is the mass below which deuterium fusion ceases, known as the deuterium burning limit, about 13 Jupiter masses. Simultaneously, the Caltech team that originally detected its radio emission in 2016 has observed it again in yet a new study at even higher radio frequencies, and confirmed that its magnetic field was even stronger than first measured. When it was announced that it had a mass near deuterium burning limit, I had just finished analyzing the newest VLA data. The VLA observations provided both the first radio detection and the first measurement of the magnetic field of a possible planetary mass object beyond the solar system. Such a strong magnetic field presents huge challenges to the understanding of the dynamo mechanism that produces the magnetic fields in brown dwarfs and exoplanets, and helps drive the auroras we see, says Greg Hallinan of Caltech. This particular object is exciting because studying its magnetic dynamo mechanisms can give us new insights into how the same type of mechanisms can operate in extrasolar planets beyond our solar system. We think these mechanisms can work not only in brown dwarfs, but also in gas giants and terrestrial planets. So we may have a new way of detecting exoplanets, including the elusive rogue ones, not just orbiting a planet star, the rogue ones. So it's all pretty interesting stuff. And so here they have now an object that is so much like what we have been talking about with Nibiru and Planet X, and the type of a rogue thing that's somewhere between a planet and a brown dwarf. And here they are just exposing it. It's like they're flashing us, in a way, a glimpse of the reality, but not giving us anything definitive, of course.